everyone, welcome to Musical Mondays, where today we're going to be learning about...
The horn. Notice I didn't say the French horn, which some of you might know the horn in orchestra as the French horn, but you're going to have to listen and find out why in our interview.
Yeah, we have a very special guest today to tell us all about the horn. But before we get there, you're a harpist, I'm a pianist, but we both love the horn. We've both had a lot of chances to hear it up close, and what an incredible instrument it is. So, do you have a favorite moment before we meet a horn player? Let's just listen to some great horn moments. So, do you have a moment for us?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. I mean, there are so many great composers that wrote for the horn, but I have to say my very favorite horn moment is the third movement of Mahler's Fifth Symphony. I got to hear the Cleveland Orchestra play it this year, and they had their principal horn player stand in the front of the orchestra for that entire movement and play the horn part like a concerto soloist, and it was so amazing.
It's basically like a horn concerto.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's give a listen to the beginning of this, and you'll see just how prominent the horn is in it. Well, that's amazing, and you can hear the kind of the triumphant quality of the horn. It's like it calls people, it beckons to people.
It always announces a new part of the piece or a new section of the piece, and
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's interesting because it doesn't have the same like the trumpet where it just kind of like has that directness to it, but at the same time it has this kind of consuming quality because as you can see with the instrument, the sound comes out the back, and so it almost just kind of envelops you in sound. Let's give a listen to one of my favorite horn moments. It's a tone poem by Richard Strauss. It's called Don Juan, and there's just this epic moment where all the horns play in unison at the same time, and it's just one of those moments where just kind of everyone like jolts up in their seat because it's such a big deal when it happens. One of my favorite moments. So today we're going to meet a horn player, Lydia Van Dreel, who plays in the Eugene Symphony. We had a chance to talk to her about the horn that she plays, and but also she has a wide range of different kinds of instruments that you can play as a horn player. So we had such a great time talking to her.
Oh yeah, there are so many things about the horn that like even me as someone who sat next to horn players in orchestra, like very close proximity, I didn't even know about the instrument or what it could do, so it's pretty amazing to hear her chat about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So hope you guys enjoy. Well, Lydia, thank you so much for joining us today to talk a little bit about the horn. And I thought we could just start at the beginning and how it became to be your instrument, how you first started playing it, and what did you love about the horn?
As a little kid, I just fell in love with the sound of brass instruments. They sound just really bright and heroic, and that was something I was always drawn to. So I picked the horn as a little kid in public school education, and I've just been very, driven to do it my whole life. So that's what I do. I'm a horn player.
Did you play any other instruments, or
I played piano when I was a little kid. Started at 5, I started on the piano, yeah, and then I quit piano, unfortunately, when I was about 10. So I'm a really bad piano player.
And let's see. So I'm actually rather new to the Eugene Symphony, relatively speaking, a couple of years. How long have you been playing in the Eugene Symphony?
I joined the Eugene Symphony in 2006 when I also became the professor of horn at the University of Oregon. So there happened to be an opening in the symphony at the time, and that's how I came to be playing in the orchestra.
It's wonderful.
Cool.
And so let's learn a little bit about the horn. That's part of this whole series is
Okay.
introducing families and students to all the amazing instruments in the orchestra. The horn, I think, is one of the most fascinating of the instruments. And maybe you
Mhm.
can just sort of give us a brief introduction, even just to like how it produces sound. Because when you look at the instrument itself, it's just a coiled up tube.
Right, right. So this is the instrument that everyone is used to seeing in the orchestra. This is called a horn. But really, what it comes from is this, which is literally a horn. This is a cow horn. So, in all cultures in the world, people have discovered that if you buzz your lips into a horn, you can make sound. So, this is a cow horn that I got in a Maasai market in Tanzania. It has a hole drilled right there, and it's basically played like that. Now I have no understanding or training of tribal music cultures of Eastern Africa, so you'd have to ask someone who knows more about that. But this is a horn, and this is related to every other horn in the world. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and it's super cool. I love it. I keep it in my office, and just as a reminder of how connected all of these instruments and all these musics are in a really fundamental way. So you buzz your lips, you blow into a column, and then air is vibrated and sound is made. That's basically how horns work. Similar to horns are conch shells, and any culture that has sort of like islands and oceans has conch shells. These are real fun to play too.
Wow. Okay. See, I can tell you're a horn player because I've tried to play in a conch shell and I do not sound like that when I try to play into one.
So you have these videos of me playing the alp horn. That's another kind of proto horn, and that basically was developed in alpine mountains by shepherds, and it was a way for them to communicate over long distances. So in this time of social distancing, horns are also really appropriate because this is basically what people did before they had cell phones.
Yeah.
They'd communicate through these things. So on the Alphorn video that I made for you, I play all of the partials, all the overtones of the Alphorn. There's 16 of those on that incredibly long instrument. These are shorter, so I can't play all the partials, but there's the first partial. There you go. I can't get a different partial out of this one. This only has the one. So, but on all these other instruments that I can demonstrate for you, there'll be multiple partials, and that's how we change pitches on horns. So
So how are you changing the partial, Lydia, just to give people an idea? Because it's amazing, every instrument normally we would think that you're doing something with your hands. And of course there are, things you move your
right,
fingers on the horn, but you're able to do so much without any of that. So what
yeah.
exactly is going on there?
So what you're doing basically is you're changing the tension of the lips, which is the vibrating medium, and you're adjusting how your air moves through your body. So it's hard to describe. It's something that more you just kind of feel as you learn these instruments. I can show you a little more on another proto horn that I have. This is called a post horn, and if you have a cell phone, you have an emoji that has this on your phone. Because in most European countries, this is the symbol for the mail. This is like how the mail was delivered. And again, before people had cell phones and electronic ways of communicating, a mailman would just blow the post horn to tell you that the mail was being delivered. So. And you can like wear
Wow.
it because when you're riding your horse you need to put your horn somewhere. So that's how what was like this long instrument, the alp horn, when people realized they wanted it to be more mobile, they wrapped it up. When they learned how to bend metal, bend wood, which is, complicated processes that involve heat and tools and stuff like that. I don't really know much about it other than that's what has to happen to a horn for it to be a circle shape. They decided that this was a really convenient shape because you could sling it over your shoulder, or in some cases, the bigger ones go over your shoulder and your head, and then you can ride your horse and signal to your compatriots, if you're out fox hunting or something like that, and let them know that you spotted the fox, or we're having, hors d'oeuvres in the meadow over there. Everybody show up to get your canapes.
So
So
you showed us, these proto horns, and I know that the modern horn has a lot more stuff going on the inside.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
how much length of tubing is that wrapped up into a circle?
That's a great question. So on the modern horn, the fundamental length of tubing is about 12 feet, give or take. Um, However, what we have is all these extra tubes, which would add to that length of tubing. This mechanism, which we call a rotary valve, was invented in the early 19th century. So I can't remember the exact date, 1826 or so. And these can be taken apart by technicians who are way better with tools than me. But you can sort of see how if you press the lever down, this rotates open and it allows air to come through. So if I have my first valve pressed down, I'm changing the fundamental length of the tubing. So instead of having a fundamental length, which we call F, if I press this down, we have a fundamental length that we happen to call E flat. So before this was invented, but we still had composers like Mozart and Haydn writing music for horn players, we played things that look like this. So this is called a natural horn. And this is actually a replica of what an 18th century horn would have looked like. So if I were a musician at the time and Mr. Mozart wanted me to play in his orchestra, I'd grab my crook. This is called a crook, and this is a crook in Mi flat or E flat. And I'd grab my mouthpiece because it wouldn't work very well without that. And then I'd play, there we go. I'd play all those open tones, and if I wanted to change the pitch, I would use my right hand, because conveniently for riding horses, we had already wrapped it up, and my hand fits there, and it can change the pitches. So all these pieces that you know by Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, this is the instrument they were played on. And if I wanted to change keys, I've got them all wrapped up in pillowcases here, I would grab a different crook of a different length. And this one is Mi, so this is for anything written in the key of E. So you can see that E flat and E are slightly different lengths. E is a half step shorter.
Mm-hmm.
So when the valve was invented, people made that length of tubing and turned it into the length of tubings that you see on the valves. And if I had more hands, I could demonstrate this a little bit better. But basically, this length of tubing becomes my first valve. This length of tubing is my second valve, and so on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's amazing that essentially you're taking the length of the Alp horn that we showed in that video, and it's almost like you have different lengths all within the same instrument with the valves that you can change how long you want that tube to be. And that's essentially, it seems like would it be correct to say that's kind of a third way you can change pitch? So there's your lips, your hand, and then you're changing the valves, like the actual length of the tube.
The actual length of the tubing. So every time I press down a valve, it's a different length of tubing. And the equivalent in a trombone would be when they extend their arm and the thing gets longer. It's essentially the same thing, except we're doing it with a mechanism and they're doing it with a slide.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So I noticed that we're all referring to your instrument as the horn. I've heard other people refer to it as the French horn. Can you explain to us where that name comes from, if it's accurate, why is it used?
That's a great question, and probably a linguist would be the best person to explain it, but you can call it the horn or the French horn. And in modern English American usage especially, horn can often mean any instrument. Like in jazz terminology, a jazz musician will call a tenor saxophone. So to avoid confusion, you can say French horn. The thing is, it's not specifically French, although at the time that these valves were invented, France was a really prominent power in Europe, and a lot of things that were French were influencing everything else in the world. I mean, the reason Louisiana is named Louisiana is because of King Louis XIV, right? So French influence changed design and function of all these things that we think of as culturally significant. So when English-speaking people discovered this instrument and wanted to call it something in English, especially in America, they'd call it the French horn.
What is one of your favorite musical events that you've been a part of?
I've had a lot of amazing experiences in my lifetime. I feel really grateful to be a musician. I always love playing Mahler. Anytime I play any Mahler symphony, that's like a peak experience, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
I mean, speaking of, so Mahler, of course, one of the great writers for horn. Who are some of your other favorite composers?
There's so many. I mean, I always love Stravinsky. I feel really lucky to have played the Rake's Progress. That's like such a brilliant work, and it's one of those pieces I think that if when you're sitting in the pit and you just play it night after night, you're like, whoa, this is heavy. It's really, really great music. I love Brahms. I love playing Brahms. I love playing Beethoven. I mean, I love all the classics, all the war horses. But then there's so much other great music out there in the world too. So I like dabbling in jazz. I've played in lots of unusual jazz formats.
Wow, that's not someplace I normally would see the horn or
Yeah.
French horn.
For sure, yeah.
And so you seem to be really busy. Like you play jazz, you play in all these different orchestras, you have all these different horns, you teach on top of that. But what do you like to do when you're not doing music?
I dabble in jazz. I would never say I'm a jazz musician. I don't play jazz. I like to do yoga. Yoga makes me happy. It keeps me feeling, physically capable of playing the instruments that I try to play. I like hanging out with my animals and my family. I like reading books. I like watching movies.
Sounds pretty great.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Lydia, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us and telling us about the horn. What an incredible instrument.
Totally, my pleasure.
Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week where we're going to be learning about
The cello.
Indeed. We have another wonderful musician to introduce you to, and I'll learn about really one of the instruments that I always wish I had played. I really wish I had learned to play the cello.
Oh yeah,
So,
me too. I think if I had to pick a string instrument other than harp, it would definitely be the cello.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week.